You've got a community of people who adore you and are doing the work, but you want to be able to see more predictable revenue coming through your business month after month so you can make those strategic next steps in your growth. And in this episode, I'm going to break down for you the three keys to creating predictable revenue in your business right now. So let's get real. Now, hey, and welcome back to the Business Real Talk. On this episode, I want to dive into you what it means to actually create predictable revenue in your business because you're a dedicated coach, consultant, or service expert, and you haven't shied away from doing the work. You've built the juicy offers that get your clients incredible results. You've built a business, maybe mostly off of referrals and word of mouth. And I say, go little rock star. And your offers are fire. They're getting those results. And you've got a community that truly adores you because you're pouring into them. Now, the problem is you want to see more growth and you want to see it more predictably. You want to be able to create that predictable revenue that happens month after month, but you're struggling to figure out what the heck is the actual missing piece. Now, let me get real with you. Over the last 12 years, I've watched so many businesses that are struggling to take the next steps and build out the foundations that allow them to create predictable growth. And as a result, they find themselves chasing the next tactic or doing every marketing thing that they can under the sun and still feeling like there's a lack of predictable income. And this is actually one of the most common fears and causes for business owners that end up stepping back into their corporate careers because they don't have predictable income in their business. Now, without predictable income in your bank account each month, you're struggling to relax, hire help, budget for growth opportunities, or make the next big steps that are going to take your business to the next level. And as always, I'm going to keep it real with you because when so many people are telling you that you just need to fix one piece of the puzzle, you just need more leads, so you run ads, or you just need to optimize your sales system, or you just need to have a group offer that supports more people, you just need to add automations. All those things are great, but at the end of the day, what's really going to drive predictable growth month after month is understanding the holistic process that actually drives revenue for you without you needing to chase every next best thing coming up. And what I want to share with you as I go through this is that if you're wondering how to actually create predictability within your revenue month after month, you might be a great fit for our Growth Bridge program. This program focuses on developing the client acquisition structure that's going to drive predictable revenue month after month. Now, inside the Growth Bridge, what we do is we work alongside you to develop your high intent messaging and positioning. What this allows you to do is gives you the control over bringing in the right fit clients and being seen as the industry authority so you can hand select the best clients for your programs while charging premium prices. We'll also help you build out your marketing system so you can effortlessly create demand week in and week out with just 3 to 4 pieces of content. And I'll show you how to implement our sales conversation system that turns that inbound demand into paying clients without any pressure or convincing. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the Growth Bridge program and how it works to develop the structural pieces that allow you to create predictable revenue month after month inside of your business, then go ahead and send me a message over on Instagram at Next Level Up CEO or on Facebook at Echeverria. And we'll share a little bit more about what it looks like and how this could be the right fit for you. Now, here's the thing that I wish that more people would talk about, especially when I had left my corporate job 12 years ago. Nobody really shared with me the fact that when you leave your corporate job, you leave the safety, the stability, the safety net of having a monthly paycheck. And that's rough. Going from a place where you know exactly what to expect month in and month out and jumping into the world of entrepreneurship with these big hopes and big dreams, but lacking the structure and the strategy that often leads to this looming fear and overwhelm of what the heck do I need to be doing consistently to create revenue in my business month in and month out. Now, so many business owners come to me knowing and understanding the importance of having predictable revenue. I don't need to convince you of that. You understand that. That's why you're here. The struggle becomes knowing the right pieces you need to put in place in order to create that. And let's get real, without doing so many extra things that are already taking up so much of your time because you're already successful. You're already bringing in clients through referrals, through word of mouth, through maybe sporadically in your marketing, whether you're running launches, you're doing master classes, you have ads, maybe you have a small trickle of people coming in, but you want more predictability and you want to be able to have the ability to turn up and turn down the right things that are going to drive growth within your business. And like I said, you're already doing so much. And what we know is that when we're able to create sustainable and predictable revenue, people are able to grow and scale so much quicker. And it's creating that peace of mind of what I like to call options, options that allow you to invest in bringing on a team member to take on your marketing, or the option to slow down or stop taking clients altogether in December so you can just be with your family during the holidays, or the option to build a nest egg so that you can actually travel on a whim, retire your spouse, or just pay for your next car in cash. Whatever it is, those options come from having predictable revenue and profit in your business. It's what's going to allow you to have options at any given point in time. So today's episode is all about how to take control of your growth and your revenue and establish the necessary pieces to drive business growth now and in the future. So let's get real. The reality is, structure is going to be what feeds revenue. It's not about just having one piece of the puzzle. And I know everyone wants you to think that it is, but it's about having the structured ecosystem that drives predictability and peace of mind in your business. Now, what we're going to do is really cover some of the key factors of what it takes to create the right structure within your business that's specifically going to drive that revenue and create predictability for you. So, we want to start with talking about the marketing system. Your marketing system is so often going to be what's going to create the pipeline so that you can pull from it and create revenue on a whim. Now, many business owners are marketing their business, but they're operating without a demand strategy as part of that marketing system. And what this means and what it might look like for you and your business is that you're showing up to networking events, or you're speaking on podcasts, you're posting social media content, you're doing the work to market your business. You may even have a lead strategy in place of, hey, I have this freebie that I'm dropping and sharing with people, or I'm running this masterclass or a workshop in my Facebook group. And the problem is, all of those efforts aren't directly correlating to revenue within your business, which means you're working way too hard, but you're not gaining the traction that you want. So, what does it look like to actually develop the marketing systems that drive demand within your business? It means that when you post a piece of content, you know the direct reaction and how that's going to affect your revenue long term. So it should be that every action we're taking, whether it's that networking event, whether that's showing up on somebody else's podcast, whether that's creating content on social media, is having a direct correlation to the revenue that we see coming in our business. Now, the key factor that a lot of people miss is that, again, they're looking at each individual piece of the puzzle without recognizing how each piece plays together. So I want to give you a quick example so you can understand ultimately what it takes to leverage these marketing systems to build demand. So I had a client who had came to me. She was doing all the right things in her marketing. She had built a list of over 5,000 people, and just a few of the things that she had done working really hard as a high achieving woman was that she was going on other people's podcasts, sharing her message. She was on LinkedIn, she was on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. She had even created some really great freebies that had driven people to her Facebook group and to her email list. She had, under all accounts, done all the right things in terms of marketing. She had built a list of 5,000 people. She had spent the time really sharing value and pouring into people. And on the outside looking in, that may look really good. But what we're ending up doing and what we've been taught in marketing is that we're just sharing our message and that will do the heavy lifting. Now, while she had quote unquote successfully marketed her business, the marketing hadn't actually been able to create demand. So now she just had what I call an expensive parking lot. And I had done this myself in the beginning of my business. I had worked feverishly to grow my Facebook group to over 2,000 members, yet month after month I was broke. I was struggling. I had nothing to show for the hours that I had spent on marketing. And I had created an entire folder full of lead magnets, again, driving people onto my email list and into my world. All of those pieces on their own are great. But realistically, what we're really trying to do is leverage the efforts that we're putting in our marketing to drive sales in our business. And you may feel the same thing. You may be feeling like, yeah, it's working sometimes. I'm getting clients here. Word of mouth is your biggest stream of income. And you've gotten to this point where you're making maybe 5 figures, but you're working tooth and nail. You're doing all of the things. Maybe it's a launch one month and a masterclass the next month. And it's just about creating endless amounts of content and you're doing everything right. Now, the problem isn't that you're not marketing enough. This is where a lot of things go downhill for people, is that they're being told that they're not marketing enough. They need more omnipresence. They need to show up on every platform and do more. The reality is, without the structure of having a strategy that actually builds demand, no amount of marketing is going to solve your problem. So, what you need to understand is it's what are the pieces that drive demand and conversions all the way from the very first introduction someone has with you. So, our approach to how we leverage marketing is developing demand. And we shared a little bit about this on our last episode on what it means to create inbound demand. But what I want to do is go a little bit more into this and share with you what it means to actually create demand through your marketing. That means that the effort that you're putting into driving traffic, whether that's through podcast guesting, social media content, ads, etc., is strategically set up to not only bring people in, but move people to the next step in your process. Now, I hear this all the time where people are caught up on this idea that if they just created more traffic, or if I just had the right type of traffic, but the reality is premium clients are everywhere. It's not that you're not doing enough of the right things, meaning producing enough traffic or the wrong traffic source. It's that you don't know how to leverage that traffic along a pathway. So a great way to look at this is I ask this question often. If I were to bring you 100 new leads tomorrow, what would the process be? What would happen next? Because traffic opens up the opportunity, but only if the roadway, the pathway behind the scenes is set up. So when we work with clients on determining their traffic strategy, we start with really understanding what's going to work best for them. So what's going to work for me isn't necessarily going to be what works best for you. So understanding that we start with traffic and that the whole goal behind that strategy is that we're identifying what's going to work for you and your audience best. I'll give you a great example. I have an amazing, incredible client. She's the queen of networking. I literally call her that. She goes in person. She meets people. She's just super talented at having face-to-face conversations. And from there, she drives them to her email list. And we have a very strategic marketing system that then moves them through the process. So they come out the other side within 5 days saying yes and being ready to work with her. From that, she has literally grown her business from zero to $40,000 a month just doing this, just using in-person networking as her traffic strategy. She doesn't use social media. She doesn't need to produce a lot of content or do any of those things because she's leveraging in-person networking as her traffic source and then driving them to her email list, which then approaches and leverages our marketing strategy and system to systematically move those people to a conversion. I want to be clear because so often people come to me and they're using a traffic strategy that doesn't feel good to them, doesn't work for them. I have another client who built her entire business just being a guest on other people's podcasts, meaning her traffic source was that she would get on somebody else's podcast. She would share what she does. She would speak to her methodology and then share and drive people to the next step of her bingeable sales system, which is what we helped her set up. And that bingeable sales system, again, leveraged the understanding of what it took to get people to make a decision through a very specific strategy and through that marketing. And as a result, she is able to maintain $75,000 months simply using podcast guesting as her traffic. Traffic gets to be easy when we understand how to direct that traffic and what happens after we bring traffic into our business. So it's about finding the aligned strategy that's going to work for best for you long term. For me, it's Facebook. I love Facebook. It's the easiest thing for me. If you asked me to drive traffic through TikTok, I'd probably rip my hair out. Everybody's traffic strategy is going to be based on them. And the key element within that traffic strategy is actually knowing how to actually direct it to make it strategic. So it's knowing from the very beginning, what am I sharing to drive traffic into my business? And then how am I directing that traffic so that it actually creates conversions within my business? It's knowing that we're speaking to the right people with the right message and then having the positioning strategy that actually makes you the person that somebody not only remembers, but can't wait to learn more about, and you become the only and incomparable solution. Okay. These are the key factors that go into it. And I want to be clear that at the end of the day, having a marketing strategy is going to be built to fit around you. So again, if we leverage a traffic source of Facebook groups, as my client Barbara did, she chose to drive traffic to a masterclass that she ran. Now, the key to that masterclass wasn't that we just had this one piece of the puzzle and the masterclass made everything great. It was that we understood how to drive traffic. When people signed up for that masterclass, we were sending out some training pieces that would go out to them. So they were understanding that information first. And then by the time they came to that masterclass was used as a way for us to create an interactive approach where they could feel firsthand what it's like to work with her and sign on. That was her version of having the right marketing strategy that works within a holistic process. One piece of the puzzle is not going to solve your long-term problem. And just like talk about this all the time, typical marketing strategies are focused predominantly on creating brand awareness and speaking to problems and churning out content and educating and adding more value. And all of those things are great. But realistically, what they're doing is just showering people with more information without recognizing that ultimately what marketing is about is creating a very streamlined approach that takes every action and builds upon it, creates compounding effect so that we're creating a very conversion focused lens. And I want to give you an example of a before and after of how we kind of do this within our business and how we support our clients in doing this is that, again, let's say that right now you're guesting on people's podcasts and you're saying, okay, I'm doing all the right things and creating brand awareness and visibility in my business. And you may be getting a couple leads here and there and they collect on your email list, but it's not moving forward. Nothing's happening. There's no clear direction, meaning you haven't created demand where when people were listening to you, even on that podcast episode, they're saying, oh my gosh, I need this. And you haven't clearly outlined or invited them to the next steps that they need to take in order to learn more about working with you. So you haven't given them what I like to call a treasure map that leads them to the promised land of signing on to work with you. So let me show you a visual example of what I mean. So often I have business owners who have come to me, they've scaled to seven figures, they've been able to create some form of success again by sporadically throwing out all these different things and creating results. But what's happening is when someone enters into their pipeline and into their world, it's like this very convoluted and confusing process with tons of turns and detours and all these unnecessary pieces of the puzzle that only lead to people getting lost along the pathway and deciding to work with somebody else. Now, you're either going to see something like this, where again, there's so many different pathways they have to go along, so many twists and turns in order to get to the finish line. Or we see that they don't have any type of pathway at all outlined, and somebody comes into their world and they've done the right work to do the right marketing and generate leads within their business, but there's no actual pathway to how they actually convert those leads into clients, therefore leaving their marketing high and dry of constantly needing to churn through more people. What I want to share with you instead is what we want it to look like. What we want to happen is that someone has a treasure map. When they enter into your world, it's a very singular pathway. They come in, they meet you. The next step might be whatever next step that might be. I'll give you an example of what ours is. Everybody who comes into our world is going to come through our bingeable sales system. From there, they're either going to make their first point of where they can make a decision. If they choose not to move forward at that time, we pop them into our one touch content system. I'll show you actually what that looks like with a visual that we have as well. But what I want you to understand is ultimately when we think about marketing and our marketing system, it's, am I giving my audience, my new people who enter my world, a treasure map? Are they able to get to the X, which is making a decision, whatever that looks like for you, booking a call, filling out an application, sending you a message? Are they able to do that on their own without me needing to hold their hand every step of the way? And are they able to do that quickly and effectively in a way that's simple and straightforward? Because at the end, at the root of everything that we do is making that process simple. So just like I mentioned for you, your traffic source gets to be the easiest piece of the puzzle. This can look like podcast guesting, having your own podcast. This could be SEO. This could be social media content. This could be in-person networking. The possibilities are endless. And we really partner with our clients to identify the best traffic source that's going to fit your specific lifestyle and your goals and your audience. From there, it's knowing exactly what next step we direct to that produces the results we want. Again, for our clients, this might look like moving them to their email list, and from their email list, leveraging their content system to drive them to the next step, which is ultimately here to that decision. It doesn't need to include a ton of steps. Actually, the less steps we have, the better and more productive our process will look like. So let me share with you a little bit about what our client acquisition process looks like and what we call the infinite sales highway. So again, as the most simplistic way to explain this is when our leads come into our world, they're entering through our bingeable sales system. Someone can immediately make a decision of, yes, this is the next step I want to take, or they can say, no, this isn't. If they don't, instead of us just parking them in our email list or on our social media platforms, our content system is built to actually pick that up and specifically target their individualized demand angles or trigger points so that each week we're creating client acquisition so they can raise their hands without masterclasses, without needing to run complicated funnels or doing anything of the sort, because our content system picks up where our bingeable sales system left off and really individualizes the reasons and trigger points that they buy and creates a weekly client acquisition process where they're raising their hand every week. So that means we have clients who, if somebody didn't buy from them immediately through their bingeable sales system, within weeks they're sitting in their content ecosystem, and that content ecosystem is specifically triggering those different buying patterns of what's their reason for buying. And each week that content is again mimicking the decision making process, and they're coming out the other side saying, yes, this is exactly what I need. This is the difference between having marketing that drives results and actually creates revenue in your business, or doing all the things and feeling like you're not getting the results you want. So, this is why it's so important to understand having the right marketing in your business and having the right marketing systems is going to ultimately change what you're able to do. So let's dive into the next piece of the puzzle, which is actually having a sales system. Because when we recognize that we have a strategic and leverage system in your marketing that can be applied to any platform, any area, and allows you to take control of that, we also want to recognize that it's about how can we create that sales system. You guys know that I live, breathe, eat, and love sales system, but they actually don't have to be complicated. As I've showed you before, it can be as simple as understanding what each next step needs to happen so that we can create predictable profit. Now, again, we talked a little bit about in the growth bridge how we do this. And what I want to do is give you an example. Our sales system can go anywhere from having a strategic sales conversation process, meaning that's how you're actually driving people to the DMs using your content. And from those DMs, how they actually convert them into a sales call. It's very strategic, it's very specific, and it's built on actually helping your clients make decisions. And it can also be more automated, like our bingeable sales system within our Sustainable Profit Academy, where they're in scaling mode. They have an influx of inbound leads that they've created inside of their business. And now they're ready to scale that. So they need to automate the conversion process. Now, again, what that looks like is that you're driving traffic through your marketing system. Your bingeable sales system comes in and it does the rest of the heavy lifting for you. So you don't actually have to hold the hands of your clients every single step of the way. And again, it's a different approach for different levels of where you're at in your business, but ultimately it remains the same. Having a strategic approach that's built for helping people make decisions and having a step-by-step clearly laid out process that moves those leads to make that decision. Now, when done correctly, you're actually not selling, meaning that there's no pressure, there's no objection handling, there's no feeling like you have to sell your soul to get someone to buy. Your sales system is doing the work for you. And I want to give you a quick story of how I experienced this firsthand this week. On Wednesday, I decided that I was going to go check out a car. I had no intention of buying that car, but I was like, let me go check out it and see what I'm thinking about. Now, when I walked into the first dealership, I walked in and they blew me away with the sales approach that they had. Now, I got to see it firsthand. And what happened is when I walked in the door, someone immediately greeted me. Once they greeted me, they directed me to the next step, which was the receptionist. From the receptionist, they take your information down and it directs you to the person who's going to be able to support you based on your very specific needs, meaning that they have different salespeople to support people if they're buying a used car or a new car. I went to a Mercedes dealership, but I wasn't buying a Mercedes. I was there to check out a Lincoln Navigator. So they have that so dialed in that once they get to the receptionist, it creates a segmenting opportunity for who they can actually direct you to take that next step. From there, he asked me a few questions and he brought the car up. And from there, I was able to go through the process of walking me through the car firsthand. And then from there, taking a test drive. Now, what I want you to realize is it was so neatly laid out in that process that I ended up buying that car that day, even though I walked into the room and had zero intention. But why did I end up doing that? Why did I buy a car in cash when I didn't even have a checkbook handy? Because they understood how to create demand. They understood how to leverage a sales system that was laid out in a way that made it easy and it made feel good for me to be able to buy. Now, an interesting fact is in between the buying process, I ended up actually walking out because I had no intention of buying a car. And I thought to myself, I can't buy this car without having seen any other car. So I ended up walking out in the middle of the sales process and going and checking out a different dealership. When I went to that dealership, the process was completely different. And I walked into that dealership and no one was there to greet me. They had no idea what I needed. They asked me a few questions. And when we walked to the different cars that they had out, they didn't know which car was which. They didn't know how to really communicate the value of the car that I was looking at. And they didn't even have the keys to unlock the doors. So the difference in that was that buying process, that sales system that they had in place, or the lack thereof, only deterred me from buying. And what we talked about was your sales system really ideally should have a process that makes it easy for you to be able to let your clients be able to buy, versus walking into a dealership where they didn't have any of the things necessary in order for someone to make a purchasing decision. I see this so often in so many businesses where they've done all the right things. They've got the marketing, they've got sales calls. Oh, yeah, you can book here, but they're not actually setting people up to make conscious decisions and do so easily. And they're not done in a way that makes it where we're removing any hesitations or fears along the way. Now, in that second example of that dealership, I would never have bought a car from them. There's no reason I'd go back because I felt frazzled. I felt like they had no idea what was happening. I was teaching them more than they were teaching me. And the difference is drastic. It's the difference between me buying a car completely without any intention to being so turned off that I would never buy from that dealership again. And what I want you to realize is your sales system needs to have that same step by step approach that drives demand, that builds on the intention of purchase without needing to feel pushy or overwhelmed. It's building on the natural intention they come in with and strategically supporting them in making a faster decision by giving them the necessary information that allows them to do that. How different does that process look when we're able to mimic that process for them without them needing to think about it? So, when I talk about mimic decision making, when I talk about how we've built these systems into every single part of the process and why this is our proprietary process, is we don't let those hesitations come up. We don't allow for things to go to a point where somebody's questioning or wondering. We developed that mimicked process that answers their questions before they even come up, allows them to strategically make decisions without us needing to hold their hand, giving them a treasure map that allows them to get to that X at the end of it without needing to be pushed every step of the way. When we're able to do this, sales become effortless. And when we're able to have the right pieces, it allows you to allow your clients to be in control of making those decisions without convincing, without pressure, without you or your team needing to take on more. That is how simple your sales system can be. So, like I mentioned in Growth Bridge, we literally have leveraged our marketing system to do two things: both create and bring in new people while also creating demand using just 3 to 4 pieces of content, because we understand psychologically what people need in order to make those decisions. And from a technical standpoint, we understand how to outline and support people with that information in order to get to the sales call, in order to get to a yes. It doesn't need to be complicated. And just like I mentioned, the Sustainable Profit Academy, we take a more automated approach where when you get to a certain level, you have enough inbound demands, leads coming in. Then it's around how can we actually automate that? And our bingeable sales system takes the same approach and applies it to an automated system where now your inbound leads are coming in, your automated system is catching and supporting their needs along the pathway and driving them to the promised land, and again shortening that sales cycle altogether. This is what it looks like for you to understand the difference. Now, let me give you a quick example. I had a client who we were doing a sales call audit for inside of our Sustainable Profit Academy. And within just a few minutes, I could literally understand why this incredible woman was booking 3 to 5 calls a week, but only closing one. What was happening was that her sales call process was long and arduous, and she hadn't built demand along the way, even on the sales call process in of itself. So when people were booking a call with her, she was actually having to sell on a sales call, which is completely the opposite of what I believe in. So what was ending up happening, and what I see so often, is that she hadn't built the demand. So on that sales call, she was having to try and do all of that in one place. And unfortunately, without the strategy and the background of having the right pieces, it became exhausting both for her and for the prospective client. Now, the issue was what ended up happening is she felt the need to coach. She had to coach through the process because that was her way of trying to get people to where they needed to be. The issue is by the end of that, only one person was converting on a call because she was spending an hour to an hour and a half trying to move people through the process. And the two big mistakes that she was making is one, she was needing to coach on the sales call, which again is a highlight of more than one problem. She didn't have a marketing system in place that was actually doing that heavy lifting for her, which meant that by the time someone got on a sales call, she felt like she needed to position herself as an authority. And as a result, she had to keep pushing and selling and needing to convince them through her coaching. This forced her to create an overwhelming situation for her potential client. And you could see them retract and no longer be interested in the next step because they were already processing too much information that they couldn't make a decision. Now, what that's doing is it's making it where you're losing control over the call and they're trying to decipher the information that you're sharing with them. Now, these hour-long sales calls where you're giving away everything and your prospects walks away just overwhelmed and unable to buy. And the solution is that we looked at how to solidify her sales calls so that we were focusing on creating messaging that allowed her to build her authority and position her as the only option so she didn't need to coach. People immediately understood how her process worked. She didn't need to prove that through her coaching. It's a huge shift in what she did. And number two, what we looked at is that she was actually having to sell on sales calls. She's convincing, she's pressuring. So often, this is what we see. We don't have a clear way of communicating your method and your process. So you end up coaching. And then when it comes to breaking down the actual offer, you're going through all the features and benefits and trying to share with them what they need, trying to pick up on what actually is going to drive them making a decision. What we want to do instead is leveraging what we call a compounding conversion question, which is understanding how to ask the right questions that allow us to gather the right information so that when you go to position the next step of your offer, you're specifically targeting what they need. You're not highlighting all the features and benefits that don't apply to them. So at the end, what that meant is that her sales calls were able to convert and she was able to get on less calls and create more conversions. And this is what it means to have sales processes and have an entire holistic process in place where it allows you to really drive results, create predictability, knowing that if I booked a call tomorrow, I know exactly how many of those calls will turn into clients because I have a strategic sales call approach to put into there. Now, what I want you to think about now that we've talked about having your marketing and your sales system, ultimately, when we think of freedom, we think of how to create a predictable revenue is just really replicating of a process. So many of you are amazing, but you're creating an entire client acquisition process that's not built on data-based decisions, which means if we have a conversation and I ask you how many leads you have in your business and how many of those turn into sales conversations and how many of those sales conversations become booked calls and clients, if we don't have those details, we're not making decisions from a place of strategic thinking. We're making decisions from a place of how we feel. And let me just do this next thing because my content isn't working or my sales process isn't working, my marketing isn't working, but we don't have the data that supports us in understanding not only what is and isn't working, but where we can optimize so that you can get better and faster results. When we understand the difference in doing this, it allows us to control the flow and the outcome of getting more clients in our business. We can make the necessary shifts that allow us to grow. So, what I want you to ask yourself right now is how am I tracking the effectiveness, the results within each step of the process of my client acquisition? This is exactly why we developed the EasyS method because we understood the need for predictability and scalability within your business. And again, it's not about one piece of the puzzle. So whether you're a business owner who's just hitting to 5-figure months or you're ready to have 5-figure days, it doesn't make a difference about understanding the key concepts. And the EasyS method really boils down to three core factors to create what I call a high profit scaling ecosystem. Number one is that innovation. We leverage what we call innovative gap methodology that allows you to position you as the one and only solution in the marketplace. So you're no longer competing for attention and you're creating demand and where you become the only solution to your clients' problems. This allows you to articulate the value of what you bring to the table while creating a market of one so that you can double, triple, or even 10x your revenue because you're able to create demand in your business and people are happily paying to work with you even at a premium price point. Step two is having a client acquisition ecosystem. It's not just about marketing, it's about having sales and marketing and having those pieces work together to create a client acquisition ecosystem. And I shared with you here today how we use our infinite sales highway, our dual lane sales highway approach that allows you to have the marketing and sales that work together to move and create inbound demand so that you're able to automate that sales conversion process and get leads to sell themselves. And we apply our mimic decision technique to every single step within the process. And number three is really being able to have a look at the results and retention. How are we driving results for your clients at scale? So you're able to have predictability and having what we call the pure profit strategy in your business, where we recognize that retention is going to be the most profitable strategy within your business. So when your offer is delivering on the promise, that it's able to do that at scale without needing a huge team or needing you to support them every single step of the way. If you want to learn a little bit more about everything we talked about here today and how to create predictable profit, I shared with you a little bit about how our growth bridge program looks like, but we also have our Sustainable Profit Academy and we work one-to-one. So what I want to share with you is if you want to take that next step in learning how to actually create predictable profit and have a complete client acquisition system that allows you to bring in the right leads and get them to sell themselves, go ahead and book a call directly with me at easyesleads.com/call. Or if you want to learn a little bit more about how our EasyS method works and how you can apply the Netflix effect to be able to get your leads to sell themselves using the EasyS method, head on over to easyesleads.com. But as always, we appreciate when you rate, review, and share. And I'd love for you to just send me a quick message over on Instagram at Next Level Up CEO. Let me know your biggest takeaways from today's episode. But until next time, here's to keeping it real.